About 6 months ago, I found this stump on the side of the road next to a house that was getting demolished. And I picked it up and thought I could do something with it, and if I didn't, it would be great for firewood. Now, I think that it's pine, judging by the smell and the look of the bark. And I think that's why it's dried so quickly as well, because it's taken 6 months to get down to 11 or 12% moisture. I've used one of these moisture meters to measure it, and I know they're not the most accurate, but the fact that it's dropped so far in such a short amount of time, 6 months, suggests that it's definitely a softwood. And as I say, that smell, I'm pretty sure it's pine. Now what's quite nice is when they cut it, it was very close to being parallel. So you can see this is one very flat side. This side was very close to being parallel. It's probably about 50 millimeters off. So what I'm going to do this week is create a simple jig to run my router across the top, and then I'll flatten this piece and bring that parallel to this. We'll stick some hairpin legs on and call it a side table. So my name's Robin. If I can, you can. Stick around, let's see what we can do with this.
I used an old piece of flat MDF as a base and cut some 2x4s to raise the sled. These were screwed into the MDF from below. The sled was some old melamine with two 90 by 19 millimeter boards that worked as fences so the router didn't wander off track. I planned on using a straight cutting bit, so without a bearing or track, the bit could just cut through the melamine. The slot was very rough, but it only needed to be wide enough for the bit and narrow enough so the base plate was stable.
Now there's just one final adjustment that I had to make before calling it a day, and that is to raise the sled up by about 16 mil, which is the thickness of this melamine. The problem is that these two 90 mil 2x4s are just not enough, and the sled's just touching the top of the stump. So raising it up to 16 mil is enough so that now I can slide it straight across the top, no problem. So now we're ready to get the router out and start flattening.
I used a 19mm straight cutting bit and was taking roughly 3mm off with each pass. I noticed that the shallower the depth, the better the cut ended up being. So on the last pass, I just took a hair off. After a while I needed to lower the sled, so I unscrewed the two pieces of melamine and dropped the track back down and carried on.
It took about 6 or 7 passes to get that bad side flat, and once that was done I flipped it over and did the other side, just 2 very light passes to smooth out any lumps or bumps. Now comes the tricky bit, and that's sanding. Because this is end grain, this is going to take a very, very long time to sand. So I've got myself a 40 grit pad, and I'll just work my way up through all the different grits.
Before moving on to the next grit, I wanted to fill this crack with some black tinted epoxy. I started by covering the top and sides with painter's tape. I then mixed some 5-minute epoxy, added some black tint and poured it in from the bottom. I knew this would make a mess and there would be no way of sanding out the stain if it got onto the end grain, so pouring from the bottom meant if I did spill any, it wouldn't be seen. Now while the epoxy is drying, I want to talk about the legs that I'm going to be using. I got these from a company based out in Melbourne called Australian Hairpin Legs, and they were really great to work with.
they actually changed the design of the base of these legs to fit the tree slice, which was really great. They aren't a sponsor of this video, but I did just want to mention that because they really did have good customer service. So if you are looking for hairpin legs, they ship Australia-wide, Australian hairpin legs, check them out. Now I got these about a month ago and they are raw steel, so they have been oxidizing since then. So the next thing I need to do is sand them, clean them, and give them a clear coat to protect them from any further rust.
Once the epoxy had started setting up, I removed the tape and got to work doing the rest of the sanding. Then I spent the next 2 days sanding all the way up to 240 grit on the top. I used a combination of a random orbit sander, a belt sander, and some hand sanding. The belt was used to get rid of the router marks left on the top, then the random orbit sander took it up to 240 grit. The sides were all done by hand.
Now to finish it off, I'm going to be using an oil. I really want the oil to work, but if down the track I feel like I need a little bit more protection, I can put an oil-based polyurethane on top of that.
Then almost immediately after this, I changed my mind and applied some satin polyurethane. The oil looked okay, but it was just a little too bland. Attaching the legs was pretty straightforward. 4 screws into each leg. I used a self-centering bit to start the pilot hole, then finished it off with a longer bit. I made sure the legs didn't splay outside of the wood so it didn't increase the footprint, and I tried to keep them as equally spaced at 60 degrees. This was quite a simple project, but it turned out great. The combination of wood and steel is always a winner. The main thing here is that you're investing a lot of time. It took a lot longer than I thought it would to flatten and smooth out that timber. My name's Robin, and if I can, you can. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click that thumbs up, and if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys soon.